there are some familiar words in here. God spoke again to Ahaz. This time he said, "Ask for a sign from your God. Ask anything. Be extravagant. Ask for the moon." But Ahaz said, "I'd never do that. I'd never make demands on God like that." So Isaiah told him, "Then listen to this, government of David. It's bad enough that you make people tired with your pious, timid hypocrisies, but now you're making God tired. So the master is going to give you a sign anyway. Watch for this. A girl who is presently a virgin will get pregnant. She'll bear a son and name him Emmanuel, God with us. By the time this child is 12 years old, able to make moral decisions, the threat of war will be over. Relax. Those 2 kings that you so worried will be out of the picture." The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
That's right.
For the record, I love it when my wife signs up to do villagers. For 40-some years, I have considered her my right hand. Even when I have to give her history lessons right around here on Sunday morning. In fact, I rather enjoyed it. Now these words from the Gospel of John, also familiar. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God, and all things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. And we have seen his glory, the glory as of the Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. This is the gospel of our Lord Jesus.
Praise be to the Lord.
Amen. During this Advent, we've been on a bit of a home tour, right? Bit of a home tour to each of the gospel writers, Mark, Matthew, Luke, and celebrated with them what it is they had to say about Christmas and the coming of the Messiah. First we went to Mark's home. It was a rather stark place. A cabin is what I called it. It didn't have any Christmas decorations up at all. Because Mark wasn't all that interested in Christmas, was he? Mark was interested in telling about the last part of Jesus' life, telling about his death, his burial, and his resurrection. In fact, in Mark's gospel, Christmas isn't even mentioned. Not one. And as they say in baseball, if you don't believe me, what do they say, Rick? Look it up. It's in the record. Look it up. Matthew, however, has a lot to say about Christmas. We talked about that not as a cabin, but as a big Victorian house, because Matthew had all kinds of people coming and going. There was an angel who came to talk to Joseph and tell him it was all right to take Mary as And there were magi who traveled from across the world to come and visit the new child. And there was Herod, who was trying to destroy the baby who he feared might come and replace him. It was a big, complex place where Matthew lived. It was decorated appropriately with all kinds of Christmas memorabilia. But when we got to Luke's house is the one that's kind of like ours. Plain houses, common houses, but there was lots of beauty there. Singing. Remember, there were singing angels who visited the shepherds who came to see what all the music was about. And there was a living nativity outside of Luke's home, right? Where the shepherds came to visit the mother and the child and the babe. And we've been asking about these Gospels. Well, where does all this good news about Jesus begin? How did these writers start writing and telling about the genesis of this story that they're telling? For Mark, for Matthew, and Luke, the good news begins at some point in human history. Mark says it all began when John the Baptist went out along the Jordan River and began to preach, didn't he? He went out there and began to say, repent, turn around. Luke says, well, I'll take it back even a little further than that. It started not only with John the Baptist, it started with John the Baptist's parents, Zachariah and Elizabeth. Because Zachariah was visited by an angel when he was in the temple, correct? And John says it was there that this story began, the unfolding of the coming of the Messiah. Luke goes back even further. Luke said it just didn't start with John the Baptist or Zachariah and Elizabeth. It goes clear back through Jewish history, if you look. This all began with the promise that Abraham received from God, that Abraham and Sarah were going to be the father and the mother of a great nation. And how great was that nation going to become? Greater than the stars in the heaven, or more than the sands on the seaside. Remember that promise? That covenant that God made with Abraham. Luke says it goes clear back that far. It all began with something happening on earth. John's going to take us to a whole nother dimension, isn't he? He takes us even further back. 1962. How many can go back that far? Remember 1962? 1962, John Glenn became the first American to orbit the Earth. And for the first time, human beings could see our planet as a whole, could see things from a whole new perspective. We could begin to have that perspective of seeing the earth as a spectacular blue marble set against the blackness of space. Some have said that's kind of a God's eye view of earth. Go to the next one, would you, Jim? Those are pictures they hang on the wall in John's house. These are pictures we'll see as we get into John's house this morning. But the first problem with going to John's house is you have to try to find it. It's a hard place to find. The destination is sketchy. The house is far off the main road. And once you find the driveway, you wind yourself down a long, dark road. There are trees pressing in on all sides. And when you feel that you're just totally lost, you round a curve. And there it is. There it is. A home that looks like it's made out of light. A light that shines in the darkness. How many of us have homes like that? The uniqueness of John's gospel is obvious. And John begins with these words. He begins with his good news using the very same words translated into Greek from the Hebrew Bible. In the beginning was the Word. It's not an accident. John says that the good news of Jesus Christ starts at the very beginning of everything. Of everything. And he takes us back to that moment when time and space began. He takes us back to that moment just before the Big Bang, when all there was God. That's where it all begins, John says. That moment of creation is the beginning of the story of redemption. The story of the beginning of life carries within it the promise that life is stronger than death. And the opening lines of John's Gospel are the first things most students learn when we learn how to read and write Greek. Because when you learn in Greek, the words are pretty simple right here in this beginning of John. God, Word, darkness, light. But each of those words are stuffed with meaning. What was in the beginning with God, John says. What was in the very beginning with God was the Word. And according to Genesis, creation happened when God spoke. The Big Bang, in other words, seems to me was a speech. No, it was a sermon. And God spoke creation into being. And so too, God spoke the law to Moses there on Sinai, right? God spoke it, giving it to the people. God spoke through the prophets as Isaiah delivers these words to his troubled people. Still later, the author of Hebrew extended this idea and telling us that Sophia, Lady Wisdom, was present with God at creation too. When God established the heavens, he writes, I was there. I was daily God's delight in the human race, rejoicing in the inhabited world. God made the world to be understood. God made the world to be cherished. God made the world to be cared for by human beings who were made and given the task of being stewards of all that God has given us. That's why we talk about stewardship around here a lot. Because it's from the very foundation of who we are. And according to Genesis, God's first words were, let there be light. And according to John, what came into being through the Word was light that shines in the darkness. And the darkness never grasped the light. The darkness never captured the light, and neither will the darkness ever comprehend it. We might say, the darkness just doesn't get it. The darkness will never extinguish God's light because it will never truly understand. That for me became really good news this week. Wednesday evening I walked over to the apartment and Debbie and I were fixing dinner and I thoughtlessly flipped on the TV. And of course what was on? Nothing other than impeachment votes being taken one after the other. And I found myself, the only reaction I had was turn it off. I just had too much. It's too much. This can't possibly be going on and on and on and on. And I think that no matter where we stand on that these days, that's kind of our feeling. We've had enough. But the word that came through to me in the midst of that was, remember what you're reading today in John hymn? Do you remember that? The light will not be put out by the darkness. We've come through difficult times before. We'll come through more difficult times yet that are ahead of us that we probably can't even imagine. But the darkness will not win. Wherever it may be, it will not win. And John said, the Word became flesh and lived among us. God has come among us. God is not in some distant heaven. God is not way back at the beginning of everything, so God no longer matters. God isn't even a master clockmaker who sets the world in motion and then steps back to see how it runs. John says, none of that. God has come among us to know us from the very inside out. God moved into the neighborhood. God's address now includes 407 Walnut. God's address includes 412 and a half Delaware, I'm finding out. What's your address? Shout it out. What's your address?
Robin Road.
God is there. Amazing news. The incarnation of God is among us. Right where we live and work, do our business. And it is in the incarnation that God is about the process of seeking to transform our lives. The Word became flesh. Jesus is flesh and blood, just as we are. He did that so that we might become what we are meant to be. Remember, Genesis tells us we are made in the image and likeness of God. Our true identity is in the reflection of the divine. And we are the creatures. We are the creatures meant to be most truly like God, who is the source of all that is good and beautiful and wise and true. I kind of have to stand in awe for a few moments. And And then, of course, as I remind you every week in our liturgy, we mess it up, don't we? And we've messed up royally. Human history is beautiful, but it's also brutal and sordid. We go to war with each other. We tolerate poverty and oppression. We fail to protect our children and the earth that is our home. And I could go on with a list that could go on all day and depress us all. But each one of us carries scars of things that have been done to us. Each one of us have unhealed memories of wrongs that we have done to others. We carry anger and shame. And saddest of all, we carry resignation. That's just the way it is, we say. There's nothing we can do to change it. But that's precisely the idea of the incarnation. That's the idea that it's to be dispelled. God became what we are in order to make us what God intends us to be. That is, in order to set us free from all that hurts, from all the brokenness, from all the shame. The Word became flesh so that we can be restored as the beautiful, loving people we are meant to be. And the very life of the Word is the light that shines in the darkness. And Jesus teaches us to see that life is more than just being alive. Jesus comes to lead us to eternal and abundant life. And in order to find that life, Jesus says, you have to be born from above. You have to be born again. That is, you have to be born from God. And we're born from above when we believe and trust in the one who is above. Nicodemus was told that by Jesus. You have to be born from above, Nicodemus. The woman at the well is offered living water from Jesus. After the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus says, I am the living bread who came down from heaven. Whoever eats of my body will live forever. And the bread that I give for the life of the world is my own flesh. And when preparing for his death, he tells his disciples, I am the vine, you are the branches. Stay connected to the vine, and we will live our lives, and we will bear abundant fruit. All of this is God's desire to restore what has been ruptured, to mend what has been broken, to bring back those who have wandered off. We love stories about second chances, don't we? About people who have gone down the wrong path and who have come back and made the very most of their lives. We had one of those stories happen in our sanctuary this last summer when our mayor came to talk to us, didn't we? When the mayor, who had spent a fair amount of time in his life in prison for selling and possessing drugs, but coming to the realization there was no life in that. And he met a church that took him under their wings and nurtured his faith in him, and now is in a brand new place. And we were so excited by that, we gave him a position of leadership in this community. Light shining in the darkness. John's gospel reminds us that this longing for a second chance, The energy to struggle for new life comes from deep, deep, deep within us. And that deep, deep, deep within us is the place where I believe God resides. And we're reminded that in our struggles we're not alone. Because that word that was with God at creation, the word that was with God at the very beginning, is among us right now, right here with us, and never will leave us, but will push us to new life and transformation and new ways of being. John's home can be hard to find, but when we're there, we learn the most beautiful, powerful truth of all. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness will not, because it cannot, overcome the light. Lord Jesus, we welcome you. Shine in us.